Welcome to another episode of Rose Resource Room. Today I'm here with Amber, who's going to tell us all about her life, all about her journey. But I'm so excited that you decided to come on the show. So thank you so much for being here. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me today.
Thank you. So, for anyone who lives under a rock and does not know who you are, I want you to introduce yourself. But before you tell us about your titles, your accolades, your roles, mom, all the things, introduce yourself without all of that. So, tell me about you, the woman, before all of the other roles and responsibilities.
Wow, I love that question. Well, I'm Amber O'Neal Johnston. I was raised in the air conditioning, but have found a love for the outdoors as an adult. And so the woods, the middle of the woods, is my favorite place to be. I'm a lake and cabin and woods hiking type of girl more than an ocean and sand and beach type of girl. I have one really strong habit, and that is tea. And I alternate between unsweetened iced tea and hot black spicy tea. All day long,
Okay.
and I travel with it. I bring it with me when I go out of town or out of the country or anything. It's just like my vice. And I love to read and cook healthy food. And I'm an introvert, so I never, ever, 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 ever get tired of being at home. I think like home is a remarkable place, but I'm rarely there because I'm always out and about doing other stuff that I am also passionate about.
Awesome. Obviously, you've done this before because you completely nailed it. So tell us all the other things. You're a mom, you're a wife. Tell us all about that.
Sure. I am wife to Scott. We're both from the Midwest. I grew up in Illinois. He grew up in Ohio, but we met here in Atlanta. So our children are Southern, even though we're not. And we have four kids. They will soon be 16, 14, 12, and 10. Girl, girl, boy, boy. They've all been homeschooled from the beginning. And we are part of a local homeschool group that I started 10 years ago. This is our 10th school year. It's a nonprofit organization, and my family is really, really active in it. And that's kind of the village that we're doing life with.
Awesome. So your children have been homeschooled from the jump. Are you one of those people who, like, before you even had kids, before you even got married, you wanted to homeschool, or did this just kind of happen? Tell us how that journey came about.
Okay, absolutely not. So my husband and I both went to public school. My parents were both public school principals.
Ooh,
My sister and my grandfather were public school elected school board officials. So like this was in my DNA. And my husband and I, we had decided when we had kids, we were going to put them in private Christian school near our house. And when he first brought it up to me, like, hey, I would really like the kids to be homeschooled. I started laughing because he's a big jokester. So I just obviously assumed he was kidding because, like, no, that's weird and we're not weird. And so he ended up taking me out to dinner. And, like, while we were at the restaurant, he, like, reached across and he picked up my hand and he's like, I really need to talk to you about something. I was like, what have you done? And he was like, no, it's not that. He said, I feel like every time I bring up homeschooling, you start laughing. I said, you start laughing too. He said, mine is nervous laughter because I'm actually really serious. And I was like, oh. And I was like, no, sir, can't happen. Can't do it. I'm not your girl. And he was like, but it's just going to be like being a stay-at-home mom, which I already was. And he was like, you love that. And I was like, nope, totally different. I'm not interested. So eventually, what happened was he was so wise. And I'm just so thankful for his leadership in this way. He said, will you try it for 1 year? And if you don't like it and it's just not good for our family, then I'll never ask you to do it again. And I was like, sold.
deal.
Let me get this year out of my, system so I can
Right.
make this man happy. And then he's gonna stop asking me crazy things. But by the end of the year, I was sold out and I've
Oh,
never, ever looked back.
wowzers. That is an awesome story. One of the things that you're really big on talking about is kind of like the different flavors of homeschooling. And I really appreciate that because I'm the kind of girl who, when I first started homeschooling in 2022, I don't even think I would ask you your name if you said you're a homeschool mom, I'm like, what curriculum do you use? What do you, I'm asking you all the things and I'm tallying in my head what other people are doing. And I don't think, honestly, I feel like this is the year, 2025, 3 years later, that I'm really finding my footing to make it mine, to not check off every single box that this curriculum told me that I have to do, to actually skip something and say I can do it my own way, to weave something in, to tweak something. So tell me how you started with that and like what that looks like.
Yeah, so I think that it does take a little while to hit your stride because in the beginning you are usually being a little more formulaic because you don't know what you're doing, and so you're just kind of following somebody's plan, like help me, tell me what to do.
Right.
And I think the more experience we get, the more that we begin to realize, I hope for all parents, that they begin to realize that you are one of the main ingredients in this dish
Mm-hmm.
called homeschooling. And so you're going to season this dish up just right for your family. So you and I can make the same meal for our families. Let's say we both make lasagna.
Yeah.
We're both going to have noodles. We're both going to have cheese. Maybe we have meat, some ricotta. We're both going to have our, Italian seasonings, and our lasagnas may look and taste completely different. Same dish, but you make yours the way you know that your man and your kids like it. And I make mine the way I know that Scott and my children like it. And I think that we forget when it comes to, we think about that in our homes, the way that we keep our homes or the way that our families spend time, the type of culture we have in our home, but we don't think about it in terms of homeschooling too. So we are going to homeschool differently. We'll have things in common, but I'm not you and you're not me. And so I think that the more I got into it, and the more I tried to be like someone else, the more unhappy we kind of all were.
Right. And we definitely know that saying that comparison is a thief of joy, right? So, like, regardless of whether it's homeschooling or your home or your car or whatever, you look on social media and they're showing you a highlight reel, not even their real life. They're showing you like the best snippet of this day or this year. And you're like, oh my gosh, I want that vacation. I want that thing. And it's like, you can't do that comparison. How long did it take you to get there? Was it like you just started off with this confidence and this boldness, like, this is my journey, I'm going to do it my way? Or was it you became an expert because it wasn't working so well and you're like, no, we have to do it my way?
Yeah, no, it was definitely B because I had my whole plan and I'm working the plan. I'm like, this is great. I mean, my kids are doing impressive stuff. We're having some sweet days. But my oldest let it be known, with her spunky, outspoken self, that some things weren't working for her. And I look back now to think how young she was and she was able to articulate it. So I do think that the Lord gave her a word for me. And like he knew that I couldn't listen to anything but the voice of my child. In that season, that's what it took for me to change. And so for her, she pointed out some things that were not okay in our homeschool, one of which, she's like, how come we never learn about anybody who looks like me and or looks like us? And I was like, humana. I don't have an answer. I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I'm just teaching you everything that I know, and I don't know those stories. So I wasn't intentionally trying to leave them out. It
Right.
just, they don't show up on any lists, and I didn't really know them myself. But when she started asking questions like that, I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta step up. This kid is not playing with me. And I realized that, like, I cannot just follow someone else's plans, even when they're beautiful plans. I can look at them, I can pull from them, but ultimately, I am the mother of these children, and I have
Mm-hmm.
to see what it is that they need. And then it's my job to help curate that, to be
Mm.
a guide on that journey.
So I have a comment and a follow-up question. The child you just described sounds like my middle son. I remember like we were walking out one day and he saw a homeless man. This was probably his first time either seeing one or being able to articulate. He probably saw, but was like too young to even ask a question. And he was like, oh, mommy, why is this man sleeping out here? And I said, I don't know what happened, but he's unhoused. And, it could be for any reason. It could have been his house burned down. It could have been he lost his job and then he had to, live on the streets. It could have been for any reason. We don't know. But that's why when we do our bedtime prayers, we really have to thank God for how much he loves us. And I'm like, nailed it, go, bro. And he goes, so God doesn't love him? Okay, I was not expecting that return question. So I can totally
Wow.
understand like your daughter coming to
Yes.
you and like you're thinking, I'm checking all the boxes because I'm doing all the right things and
Yes.
I'm not only giving you the knowledge I have, but even more. And she's like, something is still missing.
Yes, that's exactly what it was. And out of the mouths of babes, right? So
I
they
know.
they will tell us, they don't hold back. And that's why I think it was a gift. It was a difficult thing for me to
Yeah.
hear or experience or walk through, but I think it's a gift because it immediately captured my attention and
Yeah.
helped me have the confidence to redirect. I mean, I didn't have the confidence right away, but I was like, I'm going to do it even when I'm not confident because
Right.
I need to help my kids in this way. So it's been an adventure. I joke around and tell people I'm kind of serious. I'm about 3 nights ahead of my oldest in school, because I'm learning right alongside my
Yeah.
kids. And, I do some, reading and research at night after they're gone to bed. And I'm just like, just try to stay one step
Yeah.
ahead. Sometimes they get ahead of me in certain subjects and they end up teaching me. But I think it's a beautiful journey. And I think the gift for me has been a cherry on top because I obviously was never setting out to homeschool because of
Right.
any benefit I would receive. So this has just been a lovely thing for us.
That's so beautiful. And I think you're doing really great because I've had veteran moms tell me you just need to be one day ahead. So the fact that you're three, you're doing great. So,
Love that.
question for you. What does this look like practically? Take history or fine arts, for example. What does it look like to create your own flavor?
Hmm. So I think for all subjects, what I'm looking for is for my children to swim in people whose stories are familiar to them and to grow from that and to be like excited about that familiarity and to have equal excitement to hear about other people's stories, to hear about people who are our neighbors that might be different in a lot of different ways or from a different country or even the United States is so huge, a different region of the United States. I'm always telling my kids like, I don't know, you Southerners, it's a joke we make at home because I was like, I don't do it like that. I drink pop, y'all drink soda, or whatever. And I think that those two things, and that's actually a lot of what I wrote about in my first book, A Place to Belong, is this idea of deeply rooting our children and who they are so that they will spread wide branches towards other people. And I don't really want to do or choose either or because if I try to say everyone else's story is important, but yours doesn't matter, that's not good. Or if I say, you're the most important thing and your story is better than other people's, and that's trash too. And so that I think is underlying everything that we do in our homeschool. So when it comes to history, I look at it just like that. We're learning our own nation's history, our own state's history. We're within there all these concentric circles. We're learning, we're American and American history is really important to us. We're African American and African American history is really important to us. Therefore, African history is important to us too. And then it's like, well, United States is a nation of many people and many different types of people. So learning from all of their stories
Yeah.
and people outside of our country, all of those things are valuable and needed. And we love hearing these stories. My kids love it. And
Yeah.
one thing that helps me know like we're really winning when it comes to history is this idea that when I was in school, I hated history. Like it
Me
was my
too.
worst subject. Oh my gosh. It was like memorize the dates, the generals, the battles. And I was like, wow, who cares? And my kids love studying
Same.
history
Same.
because it's about the stories and we're reading these living books and biographies and historical fiction and we're going on a crazy number of field trips so we're seeing a lot of these things in person
Mhm.
and so I think it's just a beautiful way to study and to consider the history of man.
That's really, really beautiful. And I love the approach because it's not extreme, like you said. You're not saying we have to go all the way this
Door
way.
has to stay open, otherwise the air doesn't work down the hall.
But I really love the way you approach it though, because it's not extreme to say, oh, there's no representation here. We're not studying this at all, or we're only studying this. Like you're doing a very harmonious, balanced approach. I really appreciate that. Like for me, what I had to do was I remember we were doing like fine arts, and it was like all these people that I've learned about, right? Like the Beethovens of the world and Tchaikovsky. And like, I really, really appreciate their music. And I wanted my kids to know them. I wanted them to be able to hear something and be like, oh, that's this person, that's Mozart, that's this. And then I felt like I was erasing a part of their culture because I'm Jamaican and my husband is Nigerian. And I'm like, but they don't know about Marley's song. They don't know a song from Fela, right? So it wasn't we have to stop studying Beethoven. It was how do we weave it all in? So now they hear One Love and they're like, that's Bob Marley, right? And I feel like,
Yeah.
yes, I'm winning. But then they also hear Beethoven and they're like, I know exactly what that is. So I love it's
Yeah.
just the blend. It's the beautiful people. Like I love when I get these forms and they're like, fill out your race. And I'm like, human? Like, what other race is there?
Yeah.
Like, that's a social construct. I'm a
Yeah.
human. Like, what are you? Right. But it's
Yeah.
just this idea of God's diverse people. There's so many different people, whether it's cultural diversity from food or music or dance or, like you said, regional. But I want them to know it all. But I also had to make sure that they were knowing my culture as a Jamaican woman because a lot of things that some people experience in terms of representation, I never experienced it because in Jamaica, our motto is out of many, one people. And what that means is you will see
Mhm.
someone who you assume is Chinese, you assume they're Spanish or Indian, but when they start speaking, you know they're Jamaican. So what that looked like is
Yeah.
the janitor, the doctor, the bus driver, the police, all looked like me, right? So I never had this idea of, oh, I can't be that because I've never seen it. I've seen it. The highest position
Yeah.
in the country looked like my dad, right? So,
Right.
or, everyone we just had this diversity of we were all one people, but it was never you're a white Jamaican or you're a Chinese Jamaican. We were just all Jamaican. It was never hyphenated. So I
It's
understand
so funny because I've heard that similar thing from so many of my friends
Caribbean.
from the Caribbean.
Yeah.
And, one of my girlfriends, she told me, she was like, it was so confusing to her when she first came to the US for college because people were looking at pictures and they're like, oh, you're biracial, your dad's white. And she's like, what? And she's like, your dad's white. She's like, no, my dad's Jamaican. And they were like, yo, your mom's black, your dad's white. And she said, like, she had to learn. That was the first time that she'd ever heard that type of language. Because to
Yeah.
her parents were just both Jamaican and no one had ever brought it up before.
Yeah.
So that was an amazing story to me because I'm like, oh, you definitely weren't born in the US then because we're obsessed with that,
I know.
unfortunately. So I think it's an exciting way to approach life though, and approach learning with our kids so that they can have like a more expansive view of people. They don't have to have like this categorization. And I think that's a lot of the problems that we see in these arguments in society right now. It's people fighting for, no, you should learn about this. No, that's bad. We should learn about that. And I was like, what if it neither is bad? It just is. And
Mhm.
can we just teach our children more expansively? And I found that not only obviously it's a good way to learn, it helps with their character and
Yeah.
empathy and self-confidence and all of that, but also it's just fun. And I think that's been one of the key things that I've shared with other families. Like, listen, I can give you all the philosophical reasons of it, but for right now, just try it because it's a really fun way of learning.
Yeah. No, I really appreciate that. I'm really enjoying this conversation and just the beauty in how you've just created this awesome experience for your family. And you're not saying, hey, I figured it out, do it my way. You're saying, no, here's some tips if you need a place to start, but do it your way, figure out your flavor
Yeah,
too, figure out your spice. So I really love that.
definitely.
So, do you have any current projects? Like, what are you up to? What is a typical day for you? Like, what is life like?
Oh, wow. So I'm a writer. I just launched my third book. So the first book is A Place to Belong, and it really talks about all the things that we just discussed in a lot of detail, chapter by chapter. My second book is called Soul School, and it's a book of books filled with children's books, children's literature from preschool all the way through high school, all focused on Black characters and authors and illustrators. And then the third book that just launched this week is Homegrown, and it is a collection of 30 essays from one written by myself and 29 other homeschoolers across all different walks of life, including some international homeschoolers that are not even in the US. And each one writes an essay kind of about some important aspect of homeschooling in their homes. So it really is the book that is manifested from this idea that we just talked about.
Amazing. So amazing. I definitely have to check that out. Did you say that's in progress or it's published?
No, it just launched. Yeah, it's out there. So
Oh,
those are all
wow.
out there. Yeah, you can find out all my stuff is at heritagemom.com. Heritage Mom is my alter ego. And all the books are on there. And I'm usually hanging out on Instagram at Heritage Mom Blog. And yeah, just loving life and doing this homeschool mom thing.
Oh,
It's going great.
congratulations and thank you so much. If you were to kind of reflect on your journey, like, you know how people always ask you, what's the one thing? And like, I hate that question because it's so hard, but I'm going to ask you, what's the one thing you wish you knew as a new homeschool mom, or what's like one thing you'd want to tell someone who's like on their journey right now?
Oh wow. So other than some of the things that we talked about, I would say that one of the things that I wish I'd known is that all of the things that I was kind of worried about, um, maybe them being distractions or imperfections versus what I had written on my paper, that actually has been the stuff. Like those have been the memories. So that day when instead of doing lessons, the kids put on a whole play in the living room, or, where the week that we ended up going on like field trip every day because all our friends kept inviting us cool places. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we didn't do any lessons this week. But like those are the days we're still talking about. And so I wish that I had known that everything is all working out in due time and it's all
Mm,
coming together just the way that it was intended to be.
I love that because for me too, like I used to think learning happens in a vacuum. And I also used to feel that if I can't test it,
Yeah.
then if I can't measure it, it starts to drive me crazy. Like I need to make sure that clicked. But like you said, some things are caught, not taught. Like it's what's happening that they're picking up. The field trip is probably more beneficial than that history lesson on paper would ever be because now they're living it, they're walking through it. It's actually making sense, and it's not just like you said, facts and numbers from a book, but now it's, oh my gosh, this is George Washington's Crossing. This is where George Washington came on that cold, icy December night, right? Like that's different from just reading a story, right? So I really appreciate you sharing that. I know a lot of times for me, it's just this idea of how do I make sure that they learn everything and check off all the boxes? But one thing you alluded to earlier was homeschooling was never just about the academics, right? Like it's the discipline, the character building, the relationship building, all the things. And I had started to make homeschooling just about checking the boxes of learning. And no, it's like so much more. So that was a really, really good tip.
Yeah. And I think too, that adds to their life experience, right? Because we want lifelong learners. So I look at now, that I'm getting closer to the end of this homeschooling part with my older kids. And I see my daughter is now a docent at our local historical home. So, this is her second year. This is going to be the second house that she's learning. And so she is the person when you walk in who's telling you all about the history of the family and this home. And those things wouldn't have happened if we were just sitting at home, always doing what a traditional school we think of. But it's because she grew up going there. And
Mm-hmm.
so, she's like, someday I'm going to be that person. And now she is.
Aww.
So I think that that type of learning really does pay dividends towards helping our children develop to be lifelong learners more than just taking a test. So I agree
Right.
with you totally.
And that is the goal, lifelong learners, and it doesn't just happen through a worksheet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Anything else you want to share?
No, I think that's it. I just
I
appreciate
pulled
your
everything out of
time.
you.
Yeah, that was great. I'm like, I'm an open book, but this was great, and I appreciate being on the show.
Yes, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate all the nuggets, all the wisdom, and I can't thank you enough for saying yes.
Yeah, you're welcome.